All right. We should be live now, hopefully, but we need to always double check when we are doing a bit spontaneous because no one knew that the new balance patch will come out yesterday, and all over the Warhammer 40k environment and communities, has been a lot of talk now the last 24 hours plus. And I'm Christian Lord from Veizla. I have Axel Rydén and Jonathan S.J. Närling. I have come up with a new solution for you, Jonathan. I don't know how you like it. Oh, I can't hear you actually. Maybe you're muted.
I think he's very muted.
I said you can call me whatever you like. It doesn't matter. Slate Johnson is the official last name. So.
Brilliant. How are you, Axel?
I'm good. Very spontaneous of G-Dubs to release Balanced Data Slate on a Wednesday. I don't know if we've experienced this before as a community. So, no, quite the shocker.
Often it's on Wednesdays. It was said it would come somewhere in the end or mid of October. Many thought it would be late September. I think that everyone was very excited. Like, Axel, like, what is your first expressions? Have you been like bored, or have you been, good that it hasn't come out this early, or what are your thoughts?
I'm quite excited. I think that many people were hoping to maybe see that Balanced Data Slate after the results of the big London Grand Tournament. Hopefully for us as Swedish national champion contestants, we were hoping to get one before our national championships as well. That didn't come through. But I'm very happy in at least having one now to deep into.
Yeah, for you who are not so deep in the Warhammer 40k community yet, Veizla organized together with several great partners the Swedish Championship. I think it was 2 weekends ago, and actually all the 16 players of that competition, the best of Sweden, had voted. So actually list submissions was the night before in hopes of this new data patch. Jonathan, as the co-captain of this Team Sweden, how excited are you right now? I know this is not the patch that it will be WTC will be played on. I know it will be the World Championship, but how eager were you to see what's happening?
I mean, there's always this feeling in the community and in the ultra competitive community that you're waiting for the patch before you start testing completely, because in Warhammer no one wants to play old rules. It's just people really don't like playing old rules. So I mean, as soon as the patch dropped now on Wednesday, we have 2 scrims, like 2 test games against other national teams planned, or 3 technically already. That's rolling. So like all that stuff starts rolling after the slate.
Because the previous data slate, I believe, came out in June and had been played up until this point, and it's been part of the WTC. So can we say a lot have been figured out, but we also saw the last couple of weeks quite a big shift in the meta, to be honest. This one will though be kind of fresh because the previous one was fought through, we could say. Like, Jonathan, you have such experience in this. What are the first things you look at, and what actually is your impression 24 hours after you come out?
It's only been 24 hours. I think I put at least 48 hours of work into this. No, I think, like, let's start actually with discussing the last meta, because the last meta was, as you said, it was very thought through, but it was also very even. Like, we had armies that were too strong, but they were not massively too strong. Nothing like what we've seen in the past with the old Eldari or Harlequins when they were insane. Like, nowhere near that level. We saw a meta where there were some top runners, but there was also a lot of opportunity for people that played factions they were really good at to do really well, even though they were not top factions. And I think this slate reflects that. Or I know, let's not call it a slate because it's not a slate. It's just a points patch and some FAQs. So basically, I think the points reflects this because they were small adjustments to a few armies Some got slight, upgrades. Some got slight downgrades, but quite small adjustments, but really good ones. So I think we went from a really even meta to an evener one.
Wow. So
for sure.
And to put some context of it is that the 10th edition, which we are playing, came out last summer, and then it's been 2 patches before this, and this is the 3rd one of the 10th edition. Axel, like, you have been playing over 20 years of Warhammer 40k, played almost all the different editions and different slates. Do you agree with Jonathan, or like what is your view on it right now?
For sure, and I mean it's the 3rd one this year, and there were 2 patches last year as well when 10th was released, and I mean the GV as a company, they have taken steps in order to balance the game with these patches. When I started out playing, you were stuck with the codex for basically between 3 to maybe 6 years, and if you had some busted rules or some busted units, then you were stuck with them for quite some time. So I mean, it's better for the balance for sure that GDubs comes in and balances overpowered units, strengthening weaker units, and what is big about this one as well is that probably they received some feedback after WTC or after anyone playing with the new mission pack that it was a bit too strong to go second in this new pariah world. So the balancing changes there, where it's very welcomed probably from the international 40k community.
Yeah, so 1 year into the 10th edition, the Pariah Nexus came out here in June, and like you said, it probably many liked it, but when it was figured out, it was very abusive as a game mechanic. And I would say to the last month here, people have been very vocal across the board that maybe secret missions are too strong. Jonathan, are they fixed now? Is it balanced, so to speak, from your point of view? Was this a change that you expected, or did you feel that Games Workshop came up with something that was kind of nifty?
I don't think I didn't personally think about this change. I mean, and I don't think this was one of the changes I've heard suggested across the vast majority of 40k podcasts out there. I think this was pretty unique, and I think it's pretty elegant. So I think it sorts it out mostly, but it's still a little bit hard to say without having played with it. But my general interpretation is that it's a good change that does what they wanted to do.
Let's see if we actually can try to get it up here on the screen. Give me 1 second. This is a bit of a gamble button I just pressed for everyone. So that's why
share screen.
That's why it blacked out here, but it should be here right now. Just gonna adjust it. So I think that, at Warhammer 40k community, you can find all these changes, but actually it's in the top right, the secret mission part with the red text. In the 5th battle round, you cannot score any victory points from the primary mission card. Is that the big thing, Jonathan?
Yeah, and that's what Axel was alluding to earlier. Basically, it makes it so, because what happened earlier is you sit behind terrain. If you go second, you sit behind terrain. Your opponent cannot interact with you for the entire game, because pushing into someone in Warhammer hurts a lot. And the denial of primary doesn't matter, because you can score in some missions. You can score the secret mission at the end and also score 15 plus primary at the end. So that's a 35-point swing at the end. Now that swing is only 20 points at the 5th battle round. So you have to interact earlier, which opens up for more opportunities.
And I mean, Axel, you probably experienced this a ton, but I mean, I saw quite a lot in these last tournaments at the Swedish Championship, also the tournament I was at, SSG singles here, that, it could go up to turn 2, 3, almost 4 before the action happened. I think we saw one World Eater player, Emil, who came second in the tournament. I think in turn 3 he hadn't even moved his units, and he's a world eater who should be up down your deployment zone. Is that also the feeling that you had, and will this counter it, just like Jonathan was saying?
Yeah, when it comes to, I think there were quite a few armies abusing this in some way. World Eaters being one of them, having a really strong resurrecting warlord, being able to stand on your home field objective, as well as T-Sons with Magnus also providing a really fast-moving piece that can basically move across the board on the end turn and score a lot of those points. All the teleportation armies, such as Great Knights or Necrons, being extremely powerful, and you feel a bit hopeless as an opponent playing versus them in those types of situations.
So you say this change will hurt a bit on the Grey Knights, on the Necrons. What did you say more? T-Son?
T-Sons, Demons, and World Eaters. Typically armies that are really quick, being able to switch sides on the board, and being able to stand with your warlord on your opponent's home field objective, or be with a battle line inside of your opponent's deployment zone. Those types of things, especially in going second, but also in some cases you were able to score those going first as well.
Exactly. So, I mean, we can deep dive. It's always Warhammer 40k. We're going to try to make it so it's a bit chewy, even for someone who's a rookie or returning player, or even someone who is advanced. There were some changes to the secondary missions. I think my biggest question is, do I just throw these cards out? Do I take them and reprint? How do you guys do it when these type of changes? Because one of the big benefits with having the cards compared to a free app is that you can get the exact wording, but now your cards are incorrect. How will you do, Axel?
I will probably use some sort of permanent marker pen and basically rewrite some of the cards. If you have played this game for quite some time and you play it every once in a while, typically you get to learn these sort of changes quite quickly. We had some... there have been some misprints from the official GW decks before as well. So as a player, you need to adapt in some way.
Jonathan, do you think that Games Workshop will reprint and release like an updated one? I mean, it was hard for anyone to get hold of this one in the first couple of months.
I mean, I'm not going to speculate into that. I think you're perfectly fine making your own cards and printing your own cards, so I recommend that.
But we can say these are small tweaks. It's not any big that change the game that these are updated, correct?
No, I mean, I think it's mostly like for most of the FAQs, including these ones, this Slate, it was call it a Slate again, and it was absolutely not a Slate. It's just clarifications. Mostly it is changes that were already how the rules are played, but to make it clearer for everyone.
Absolutely. And here, in the primary missions, though, with Linchpin, that actually is a pretty big change, because Linchpin was, I think, a lot of people likes it, but it was very abusive in the end, that if you went second and you had a strong killing army, you could score so much. This is impacting when you're playing the game, for sure, in the tournament environment.
Definitely. And when going for a secret, you cap on 40, but Linchpin, as it was, you were maybe putting out a 43 on primary for your final turn, controlling all of the objectives in No Man's Land, also your opponents, while having your own, plus the secret mission as well. Now, with that being capped to 15, it makes the primary game a bit more balanced, hopefully.
Very cool. Okay, we're going back here and leaving the cards on this part, or if it was anything else from the, can we say, more general rules that could be good to point out at least.
Well, when it comes to the secondary mission, Storm Hostile Objective, one change was made, so you are able to score it basically in your first turn. So as a player, especially going second here, you are able to do it if your opponents, for example, walks onto the midfield objectives, or if you have access to maybe some sort of either very fast melee or strong indirect piece, you are able to kill something standing on your opponent's home field as well.
Yeah, and I think that maybe it helps a bit here in the fixed part. We also saw a new thing. I don't know if it's been existing before, but that actually is a crossover that you cannot have as a fix recover assets, for example. Anyhow, it's Warhammer 40k as always. Is 1 million things that we can talk about, but I think one part for everyone listening into this one on Twitch or YouTube, watching this afterwards, like please come in on the discord.gg/Veizla. There's been a lot of conversation these last 24 to 30 hours, and for sure we continue as we're discovering this balance patch. Also, please follow all on our socials, and for sure share on Team Sweden also a bit extra as they are taking on this new venture. But if we would try to rate this, Jonathan, like, is this a 1? Is this a 10? I mean, you've been through this so many times. Like, are they hitting the mark? Because they are a bit ballsy in doing changes quickly, for example, on these missions that we just checked. But they are not doing super big point changes in this patch.
I mean, it's hard to rate because it matters what you want. I mean, someone might want an entirely transformed metagame from this, and that's not happening here. If you want to play a stable, like if you enjoyed the game as it was before this patch, you will like this a lot. Like as a stable upgrade, and I'm gonna say upgrade because I think it's definitely an upgrade to the old meta, and I like the old meta. So I mean, if the mission statement was to improve the current state of the game in the current meta, I think they did really, really well.
So if you like 10th edition as it has been the last couple of months, this will make you like it even more. But if I force you, is it a 7? Is it an 8? Did they ruin the game? Apparently not. It doesn't sound like that.
I mean, it's probably an 8. I mean, if this was the mission, then it's around an 8, I'd say.
And for you, Axel, I mean, Drukhari went down a bit, Aldari went up a bit. We will probably talk about it more. But for you, if you would rate it?
I'd say it's probably an 8 or a 9. We will get back to that, but I think UW's, when it comes to points, especially missed a very new unit, one can say, when it comes to balancing stuff. We will probably return to it while discussing factions.
For sure.
But I'd say a 9.
Very cool.
They addressed some big issues. They did some tweaking for every army. They haven't done so historically, leaving some players a bit left out, I think, when it comes to, all right, we didn't get a single change. I guess we will be stuck here in the middle statistically. And it's quite good for the hobby as well, right? As an hobbyist or as a 40k player in general, to maybe have a look at that unit that got some sort of points decrease, and maybe I will get to paint my Shining Spears now as an Eldari player, for example.
Yeah, I remember back in Dota 2 with the Valve team, sometimes they actually were forced to patch a certain hero just to give the community attention to it, even though they thought it was too strong already. So for sure, this can be both what Games Workshop believe, but it can also be that maybe the community haven't discovered some parts. Who knows? For me, I think it's hard to rate it, but I think that one thing is for sure that I think it seems to go in the right direction and even improving better. But we could see, like before the WTC, Astra Militarum was arguably one of the worst factions.
Stop.
Wait.
You made everyone else give a score, and then you refuse to give a score by saying it's too hard to rate. Give me a number, Christian.
I'm at 8.5 between you guys.
Okay, great.
I think that I would have liked that they could have spiced up some things a bit more, but I do think that what's interesting, like I was saying, like Astra Militarum before WTC was one of the worst. After WTC, it was question marks, and can we say coming into this slate, it was probably the strongest, and nothing had been changed. I think that is also showing that even if the community is spending a lot of time in figuring this out, and I mean that's a big part of you guys' life, we also see that this is a complex game, and you can't get everything right, even if you're spending hundreds and thousands of hours. So I think Games Workshop seems to build a lot of confidence. That is my impression of this, and for sure taking down some of the strongest factions and maybe boosting a bit of the weaker ones, but they are not doing big change. I think Secret Mission was actually maybe arguably the biggest change that was also needed here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Astra Militarum is a good example. They have they received buffs in several patches in a row and were still not played. And then someone finally, actually, it was a nerf that made people play the good build of Astra Militarum. It was they kept getting buffed, and then when they finally nerfed indirect fire and people started building lists without indirect fire, is when we saw the rise of Astra Militarum.
So they forced the players away from a bad one into something that people hadn't really figured out was that great. And I mean, one of the things probably why France was doing so well at the WTC. Axel, I mean, you played for over 20 years and been through this so many times. But, you know, for you and for Jonathan being experienced veterans players, how do you even approach this type of new data slate? And could you give something pointers towards maybe a rookie or a returning player? I mean, one thing that sounds to be is that the current army you have, you don't need to throw it in the trash can and just buy new units. That's one thing for sure. But how do you approach it, and if you would give some advices if you can?
Well, typically when it comes to points increases or decreases, GDAVs is signaling to you as a player, like this is either a very played unit or a unit that hasn't been played that much. And then as a player, maybe looking into a new army, for example, all of those new points can be an indication of strong units to actually head for in some direction. Because there was a reason that they got nerfed when it comes to points. And those units also tend to provide something to your army that your army lacks in different areas. So looking at the Bullgrin, for example, one of the stronger units of the previous meta, providing some, like a strong anvil unit to your otherwise shooting oriented Astra Militarum army. Even though they got a per points hike now, it's still worth it as an Astra Militarum player to field a couple of units. Maybe not the full 18 Bullgrin, but it's still a good data sheet. And even though they're a bit more expensive, they still might be worth for you to sacrifice another unit that doesn't provide you with that asset to go for it. But also on the other hand, as I said before, if a certain unit gets like a really good points value and can provide you with some mission playing assets, or maybe provide some ability or just some basic screening, that can be nice as well. So there are different approaches depending on the army and also your play style, I think, for which units to grab when you're starting to collect an army, or if you're expanding your current one.
So I mean, for sure the community is super hyped, and we are really hyped for this one because everything feels fresh, is new, is attacking the game with new eyes. but also, isn't it a bit of reality that maybe you lost one 55-point unit in your army, or you can add a 55-point unit to your army? Is that like 80% of what actually have happened, and then there will be some cases, or is that trying to simplify too much?
No, I think that's true. Like I don't think people understand that if you played if I just gave an opponent 100 extra points to play with, that would not impact the game as much as you think. Like
I like it. Should we have handicap? Because I mean, I would love to have a couple of extra 100 points versus you, Jonathan, when we face off. Should that almost be built into the game?
I mean, you could play, say, 1860 points of Harlequins and still win a tournament.
So I think I actually have learned this reference that Jonathan submitted. What was it? 1860 points. So you missed 140.
Yes, exactly.
And how did that tournament go?
I won, but and I still think I think I cut too little. Like, but as I said, I think that those 100 points are not as important as you think they are, because there's mostly usually have a trash unit you can lose, or like. It's not. I don't think 100 points is a difference between going 4-1 or 5-0. Maybe it's the difference between going. Maybe it's one loss every 15 games or something like that. Like it's smaller than you give it credit for. And historically, also, like, point changes has never. Okay, I'm not gonna say never. Seldom been enough to take something from. Overpowered to unplayable. That only happens with the point changes and rule changes at the same time, or several waves of point changes. And I think very few things are unplayable after this patch. I mean, I think the only thing I could say, like, if this was your army, you maybe should look at something else, and it's like the Black Templars Crusader spam went up a lot. But that doesn't mean that Black Templars are bad. Like, Black Templars is still a good army, but just spamming Crusaders is probably not where you want to be.
And that's the so-called ACDC that Oliver for France played and won war games, and then also won the team game here in August.
ACDC is the Chaos Cultist.
Oh, sorry.
Black Templar Crusade. I mean, there are two horde lists, both played by Team France. But yeah, no, they're different lists.
Yeah, sorry.
ACDCs, for example, went up in points and got a rules nerf, and I still think they're good. So it's that's what I mean. Like, if a unit is actually good, a few points on top of it is not going to make it terrible. So if it's your favorite unit and it increases in points, keep playing it. It's still good.
Understood.
And the surge move was another thing that UW put up into this slate as well, providing only a single blood search move. As an opponent, makes all those types of units quite much easier to play against. The Accursed Cultist spam when it comes to chaos lists, or the Endless Swarm of the Nids, or the Khorne Berserkers, as an example. And being able to stand outside of 7 inches now and not being charged in your own turn makes for quite the healthier game, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. But if I try to speculate a bit towards you, Axel, like, would you say that maybe you have an army or a list that you've been looking at, and like, I really want to buy it, or I actually started to build it and paint it, but I haven't really played it yet? Is that the trigger point for you if that gets some point nerves that, like, okay, go to, I was right in my hinges, now it's even a bit better? Or how do you, like, if you're going to select like the first real big tournament that you will play coming up next, like, what is your decision making around that?
Well, first of all, if you're quite new into the hobby, and especially in this day and age of changing metas, one suggestion that I would do is to basically pick whatever cool units or army concepts that you like, and start collecting them, gathering up on 3 of every basic data sheet, and just paint it. Have fun with that aspect of the hobby, because if a unit is too bad one quarter, then it will get balanced eventually. But personally, when it comes to, if I were to play a big tournament within the next month, which I will probably look for a strong concept that has been working out quite well for the last couple of weeks or months. As of right now, I'm having a hobby project building a chaotic sisters army, for example. Even though they got some really big point nerfs, it's still hell of an army, and they will be very playable. And I think Jonathan agrees with me here. So yeah, I would probably approach it from now, with the upcoming weekends here to come. What lists will be ending up on top? What will the top players of the world be winning their tournaments with? And maybe get inspired by looking at successful players, or preferably successful army concepts, and like have a look at why is Liam playing his chosen rhino again. Maybe I should give it another spin, and the results might be really good for you at the table.
Understood. All right, let's try to move to the next part of this one and actually start talking more specifics. I mean, we give some hunch and so on. Yesterday on the Veizla Discord, we did start a question and a poll to see actually who the community felt would be the biggest, can we say, deserving winners. Is always a bit hard with the interpretation here. And Orks came out well above everyone else and actually got 37%. So almost 40% of all the votes went to Orks. So I thought maybe that's a good starting point to discuss, because what we did see with the codex coming out in the late spring, it was a big orc hype, but I don't think that the orc hype really lasted. I think that, I don't know how many, I know the Americans for WTC had orcs, but we did see a bit uprising. Was it with the detachment Warhorde here in the right before this slate? And to me, it looks like all of Orcs' slate is green. So green is nice, to say the least, but I mean, Axel, maybe we should start with you, because you truly hate these orcs, so maybe you can give an unbiased part, and then we can go over, or a biased part, and then we can go over to Jonathan for mere unbiased.
Yeah, it's quite,
what is your take on the orcs?
Part. Being an elf lover, I've always hated the orcs, and that is part of my heritage that I'm willing to put forth in this group, sharing with all of you viewers at home. It's quite the rough army to play against, and also with this new slate providing even more units into an already good army, gotten some great results from Brian Seep, who came second at LGT with his Warlord list as well. Also, we have a great orc player here in Sweden, or quite a few of them, but Andreas Holm, being a champion of the orcs, has always defended them, especially when it comes to team settings. He didn't attend WTC this year due to him having children. If he would have played, maybe Orcs would have been up on the table for us as well, even before this balance patch. So I think we will have a Orc heavy autumn coming up.
Would you call it an Orktober?
Good
maybe
one.
So.
Very good one, Jonathan. But just to ask you, Axel, here. Was this a deserving buff that the Orks got, or do you feel it's almost like over the top that these Orks will almost be one of the strongest factions here in the Orktober?
I mean, Orks is one of those armies that has quite a large player pool of typical Ork players, which might affect their win percentage on a global perspective, doing really Orky things, such as screaming your lungs out while walking, which is very cute, but somewhat maybe not being that extremely talented when it comes to holding back resources, which is a key strategy while using a high pressure board control army, which a typically good Ork player tends to do. So while having another extra couple of units to just score some early secondaries or whatever will provide even more tools for the top percentile of Ork players, which will continue to win within the upcoming months, probably.
I'm laughing because it sounds like you're still kind of positive to these changes, which maybe is fair but a bit surprising. Jonathan, what would you say? Like, which detachments are getting the buffs? Is it Orks kind of across the board? Because Orks do have almost that all the detachments are playable, but haven't really been figured out which one is the best. And maybe that's how it should be.
The claim when the Ork Codex came out was that every detachment was playable, and then nerfed Bully Boys, and no one played Orks anymore. So I don't know if that was true or some kind of hope. But just a short aside while we're on the subject of Axel's hatred for greenskins. WC 2 years ago, he had to proxy some of his models using Grot. And I saw physical revulsion in his entire body as he had to pick these Grots up and put them on his side of the table. So
it was very painful.
For whoever thinks this is an act, it is not. It might have started that way, but it has become definitely its own kind of sickness. No, so I would say that I think Warhorde is the clear best army here for Orks, clear best detachment. And I also would say that, remember what we talked about earlier, I mean, there are a lot of green point changes here. That we're talking an extra unit maybe for Orks. It might not even be an extra unit. It might just be that you get some better units somewhere. So I wouldn't be worried about it. But the other thing that really buffs Orks here is that against pressure armies, secret missions was the breaking thing, because they could keep your primary down and down and down, but then you scored 35 at the bottom of 5. And then all that primary denial didn't matter. That is now gone with secret missions being nerfed. So that is another buff to Orks. And I think they certainly come out of this looking strong, but they have fundamental weaknesses in the fact that they don't have any shooting units, for example. So I wouldn't expect them to dominate in any way, but definitely a strong army that will win events.
And it is interesting because it was said in the summer that we are in the melee meta. I would almost say that coming out of the previous slate, we are more, I wouldn't say in the shooting meta, but it's for sure balance it out. Talking about some, I guess, more melee army, hopefully I'm not saying anything stupid here, is the Genestealers, because actually they got from the Veizla community 24 percentages of the votes that they are deserved best buffed army. I don't know, actually, if you want to go ahead here with the Genestealers.
Well, as for the last month leading up to the balance data slate here, some international players such as Eric or Ines, for example, has proven that it's quite the army to use when used correctly, and that combined with having another very green paper here when it comes to units. It looks good for them, for sure.
But it should be said,
Especially,
statistical wise in tournaments, this is the worst army faction in 2024. I think they have somewhere around 37% win rate or something along those lines. So buffs probably were needed, but is it also that Genestealers is I know it used to be even harder, but it's a pretty different type of army that it's not so easy to play, or what's the challenge with the Genestealers?
I mean, it's a newish army. Also, that means that not that many players have it, and it is integrate. Whatever. It's a hard play style, I would say.
Gotcha.
That not everyone master it, but it also means that people play against Genestealer Cults are seldom gonna have reps into them, and they're seldom gonna make the correct choices. So win rate for the Genestealer Cult in particular, I would say, does not represent the faction very well at the highest level of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's a point which is kind of often a bit underrated or undervalued, that you have one meta in the very top, so to speak, and that's not even top 100 in Sweden. That's maybe top 10 or top 15, and maybe international a couple of hundred players. And I think that, one of the armies that you have really liked, Axel, we probably talk about it soon, Drukhari, I think is that someone like me facing Drukhari for the first time, I just get stomped. But if it's someone on the very highest level, they know how to play versus Drukhari, and maybe they are not as strong as the win rates have been here in the summer, where they were up to 60%. But okay, Genestealers, they needed to get buffed. Is it, Jonathan, something that you will pick up because you think it's cool, or because they are strong now, or is it more that Team Genestealer Cult or the cult should be happy?
I think if you're a Genestealer Cult player, you're happy. I don't think anyone should collect army. It's really expensive, and there's too many models.
All right.
So after it,
and that's quite the problem with the quarterly updates as well, right? With such an horde army, which a Genestealer Cult army is right now, for example, it is quite hard if you're at least some of a hobbyist, to just gather up the entire army and get it painted and find a tournament before whenever the next Slate comes, if it's December or early January, as with previous years, to just make it happen. So maybe from that perspective, it won't be that much of an issue.
Or you can be lucky like me, who picked up the Blood Angels coming into a new codex. That also was what happened. Or, for example, Necrons, who seem to maybe pop up again to be strong. They were actually not got many votes. I think 2% believed in the Necrons. But I would say that it seems to be Orks and Genestealers being the outliner here at Veizla community. And I think the third one who came third is Chaos Space Marines. They only got 14%. But I thought that they would go almost more into a nerf than a buff, and actually they got quite a lot of buffs. Or what is your guys' views on the Chaos Space Marines? A pretty versatile and not really thought out faction, maybe?
It's hard to say. The ACDCs were definitely the biggest offender there, but they just have... Dark Pact is an amazing faction rule, and they have several detachment rules that really interact well with that gives rerolls. So I think they are just a good army with really good rules, and they have lots of units that are the right points to be playable as well. So
yeah, and their army rule is that with the Dark Pact, that they can take damage, and how is it? Then they can choose sustain, or how is it working?
Yeah, it's a leadership test. If you fail it, you take damage. But either way, you get lethal or sustained. And if you have any way to introduce rerolls to hit, then lethal or sustained hits becomes a insane rule. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then also, it's quite a deep codex, having access to 7 different attachments, and so many data sheets to choose from. When it comes to Liam VSL's list, that he won both the Invitational but also the big London Grand Tournament with, it was a list that hasn't been played before in an international sort of environment. He tried it out before WTC, I think he has mentioned somewhere, but he saved it for a later time. And that list, for example, hasn't gone up in points, while the Accursed one has.
I think it even got cheaper, I believe. But it is interesting, and I think that Chaos Space Marines, when they had their codex very late spring here, haven't really been figured out, and I think that will still be open. But one question that I had to both of you guys is that I'm used to, let's say that you buy 5 units or 5 models of one unit, it costs 100 points. Then if you buy 10 of those, it costs double amount, so it costs 200. But I have noticed that a lot of these changes have separated 5 to 10 models, and if we look at the top right corner, I would say one of the most loved or hated units is Warp Talons, depending on which side of the Chaos Space Marines army you stand on. They actually keep that the 10 models will cost 270. I think that they were getting more points from the last update, but they are lowering the 5 models. And I mean, Warp Talons, for those who don't know, is that when they go in and they fight, if they kill the unit, then you can take them up to Strategic Reserve, correct? Which means that a 5-1 is maybe not as efficient. Is this a change between 5 and 10 models that haven't been as common? Because to me, I hadn't really realized this before this update.
They do it. I mean, they do it for different reasons for different units. For Warp Talents, it is, as you said, a killer unit can kill big targets and still go up. A small unit can only kill cultists and they go up, for example. They also do it for other reasons, like for Scourges, a 5-man unit it's front loaded in the points because all the heavy weapons or special weapons go in the front unit, and then the back unit guys don't get any, so they should be a lot cheaper. And for other units, they get a lot out of stratagems or other rules, like Grey Knight Terminators are cheaper for 5 than 10, so then they put the extra points at the back of the unit. So I think it's
and that's a new invention of GW now when it comes to point changes, which might affect some decisions. Another offender being the Seraphims in Bringers of Flame, for example. Having those additional 5 models providing some extra flamers and some extra dead wounds will now affect you a bit more points-wise compared to a 5-man.
So it is a pretty new tool that Games Workshop has used quite a lot for this data patch.
Yes.
Okay.
It started last patch, I think, but it was also a tool that was not available until this edition, because previously we paid points per model in the unit, right? Now we pay per 5, so it's introducing some granularity in what people have been complaining is not a very granular system.
Very cool. Yeah, I know that some love this 7 unit models and that you can have, pay for the equipment and so on. But I think this adds complexity. I mean, yesterday, when I was trying to build my own armies, being a noob in this game, it took some time to realize actually what the points were called, and also seeing, with the new codex, quite a lot of units have changed some keywords, etc. So, it takes some time to get the head around it, but, I like it. I think it, for example, from the Space Marines with the Assault Intercessors with jump packs, I love to have those 5-man units. Now they are more expensive, but it does mean that the 10-man units are not more expensive and then very cost efficient, which changes how you play and how you build your army quite significantly, even if it's just a couple of points here and there. These were the kind of top 3. Is there one army that you felt is missing out from the Veizla community votes? Axel is, and I think I know which one it will be, but let's go ahead.
To be fair, the Drukhari is in the vote.
Yes. Oh, darn it. Well, I would say that Astra Militarum will be quite happy as an Astra Militarum player with this slate. Personally, I think that the points of Bullgwyn could have gone even further up. Some adjustment to their invul, or maybe a change in their -1 damage rule, for an example. But what GW especially missed out is the new Astra Militarum unit that will, for 90 points, give quite the headache to your opponent, times 3, because as an Astra player, go get 3 of those before they run out in stores. The new science, of course, the Aquilons. Having access to a 3-inch deep strike rule with some extra shooting, being able to throw grenades or just stand in the way will be very, very good. Almost being a tiny army inside of the army itself.
Sounds completely horrific, to be honest. And yes, I think that Astra, even if, as you said, the Bulgars, I think they got 25 points more expensive per unit or something along those lines, but no, not per unit, sorry, per free unit, of course. All right, so Astra, we will see the dominance. We saw in the Swedish Championship that Björn on the Astra did win. Johan Norman came third, correct? Or am I misremembering now?
He came fourth.
He came fourth. Sorry. Yes, of course. Yeah. Pontus Koch with his Space Marines. And I think that's also an interesting one with the Space Marine changes. But we can't go through everything because it is Warhammer 40k and it will go on for eternity if we're going to talk about all the different variances. And it also should be said, I actually didn't say it in the beginning of this show, that this is new. None of us have figured out anything. What we know today probably will change quite a bit within the next couple of weeks. I don't know. Like, Jonathan, when would you say that the meta, is it the first month or does it take 1 or 2 weeks before it kind of settles a bit and we will see? Because there is so many different variances in a kind of rock, paper, scissors environment. When can we believe that at least you start feeling, oh, this is probably where the meta is, or have you already figured it out?
And you're muted again.
He knows.
Problem wasn't that I was muted. Problem was I couldn't find Discord. I mean, I don't think the meta for this patch was fixed until after WTC, right? It takes. This meta will not be fixed until 2 weeks before the next patch, probably. But I mean, there is already a meta now developing. Like you can look at what got buffed, what got nerfed, what's recently released, what's good. I mean, the meta it already exists, right? And you can already, or you should already, at the highest level, be thinking about how to counter said meta. That is what we're doing in our arranged games against other teams now. Is that we're looking at what do we believe to be what looks like the strongest armies coming out of this, and how do we counter them?
Absolutely. I will be very excited. So for you, it's not about 1 week or 2 weeks. You think it would go on almost for 2 months to really figure this one out.
Yeah, and then mostly the takeaway is the meta is here now, and whatever it is, you shouldn't wait for it to settle. You need to put the work in now. So.
It's a very good point. All right, so I think over to more, can we say, I wouldn't call them the losers, but the one who got maybe undeservedly hit. And Axel, this is one of your favorite armies, the Drukharis. It has during the summer been the strongest according to StatCheck's rank. I think it was almost up to 60% win ratio in tournament environment. You brought them to WTC, we can say, with various results. I know that USA's star player Anthony, what's it called, Vanelli? Vanilla. He's been butchering the Drukharis and said is impossible. I think actually, Axel, you amongst many others showed that it is possible, but is it a dead army now, or because I think that I don't know how many points it was increased from your WTC list, but it's in many hundreds. It feels like
my WTC list went up 100 points or something, which, well, looking back on it, maybe it wasn't like the army we were hoping for the team to provide, while being extremely strong if you haven't faced them before, which was quite advantageous for us at WTC, even versus the better teams. They do lack some very important things when it comes to handling, for example, the Bullgrin of the Astra Militarum or the Deathwing Knights, for example. Just bouncing, basically. Which is quite hard when you're a melee army, not being able to provide enough damage in melee, while at the same time being made of paper. So I think GW has, nerfed them a bit too much, leaving the points as it is on the planes. But I personally so believe that it wasn't the strongest list out there.
And I actually should pull it up also here. Sorry for that. So you also can see, because it is kind of red across the board. But Axel, also to give you some credit, I think that you and Games Workshop were completely aligned that Drukhari in the last data slate was really, really strong. Maybe Anthony and the rest didn't really figure it out. Or what would you say, Jonathan? Is this just too hard of a nerf? That's what 44% of the Veizla community thought.
Drukhari is the biggest mistake I've made all edition, and I didn't even play it, so I don't know. No, but again, like, yes, we look at this wall of red text here, but as Axel said, this is 100 points difference. Those 100 points are not going to affect many games. If you were crushing people with Drukhari before, you will keep crushing people with Drukhari, because the biggest difference between if you beat Drukhari or not is not that extra squad of, I don't know, Incubi. It is the fact that your opponent hasn't got reps into your army. It is like Drukhari is the best noob stomper out there, if you like that.
Going after me, so to speak.
Yeah. And I've seen your list. It's yeah.
All right, but maybe we can leave the Drukhari part. It did get quote unquote heavy hit, but it's not unplayable in any sense or regard here. No. The next one, I know the question we asked our community was which one was undeserved, and maybe the T-Suns are the most deserved nerf, or what will you say here on this one, Axel?
They have survived quite a few balance data slits when it comes to points adjustments, being left behind while at the same time having one of the strongest army rules in the entire game, providing excellent mobility, excellent ranged mortal wound output in a way that when facing them, you're somewhat considering, are you playing 11th edition or something? So yeah, it was well deserved, and as Jonathan was saying, as well as, discussions I've had for the last 24 hours with T-Suns players here, they just get rid of a unit and continue playing the same awesome army, probably.
Continue stomping people. I think that one interesting part with the T-Suns, and I guess we actually talk with sisters coming up next, is that I believe Games Workshop did announce that they are looking into the Cabal points and the Miracle Dices. Is that maybe what's needed to solve T-Suns? That, you can go with the points, but it's maybe some fundamentals in it that needs to more be addressed. Is that a correct interpretation of it?
Yeah, I don't know if they promised to change the cabals for now. I think the miracle dice they signaled will be handled as well with the resurrection mechanic of the cult, probably. But yeah, when it comes to the Tisan Codex, something will happen to their army rule. Hopefully.
Understood. And I mean, we talked a lot about this, that it's, it's 100 points here and there, it's one unit. But from my noob perspective, though, I have felt sometimes, though, that it is that unit or that firepower in that certain point that it's like either you completely win or you completely lose. And I do feel that Tisan is one of those type of armies where it's super complicated to play, but it's also trying to solve the puzzles with the secondaries. And now if they lose one, maybe it's just that they will fall through, or is that not the risk, Jonathan? Like you think that Tisan players have been playing this great? We have many here in Sweden, to be honest, that they will just continue dominating, or can it be that this is just a break point where they break? Because Tisan can really fall through. Like if you lose your Magnus, then it's just game over.
Yeah, I mean, why would you lose your Magnus? I
Sure.
I think Tisans is definitely worse. Like, I'm not arguing the army didn't get worse. I'm just saying the army is still really good, and I think there are small shifts, not huge ones. And I do think that fundamentally, Thousand Suns is not an army that can be fixed by points, because there is a gap where they become unplayable because you keep increasing the points. Whereas the problem is probably the army rule and the detachment rule. Like if you removed, say, devastating wounds from them, then they would become unplayable, because there are other two things they can choose: is either lethal hits or sustained hits, and all of their weapons are flamers, so they don't do anything. So it's there's adjustment needed there.
Yeah, and for sure it's also one of these armies which we are waiting for, a codex. I don't think it's been announced, but part of kind of this big Chaos 2025 that has been teased at least. All right, something that is close at heart of both of you guys. Jonathan, you brought Sisters to WTC. Axel, you've been playing Sisters and built up this army. They for sure have been one of the strongest. I think that the Veizla community thought that this was, can we say, an undeserved nerf, was kind of low. It was like, let's double check here, 12%, maybe 13%, sorry. I asked myself here in the Veizla to you, actually, like, okay, is it Bringers over now and this other attachment? Because it should be said that Holy Martyrs and what's called Penitent Host, at least, I don't know about Army of Faith, but those are also strong. It's just that Bring has been so great. Axel, what is your current view on the Sisters?
Well, when it comes to the point adjustments, and since every single player apart from one on WTC chose the Bringer's detachment when it comes to army building, the points has been signaling that every single datasheet basically used in that specific army has been penalized in some way. So as a Sisters player, you do have access to either dropping like an emulator and a unit inside and play basically the same army, or you can look around at some of the other amazing datasheets in that codex, and having access to the fabulous Miracle Dice rule, which is quite obnoxious when used correctly.
Yeah, I think that the Triumph of St. Catherine there in the bottom, was that increased like 60 points or something along those lines?
60 points, and it's still an auto-include by any means.
And it is still an auto-include, and it was, I think, in every WTC list that could bring it. And you say 60 points more, and it's still something you have to have.
It's probably still too strong.
Wow. Yeah. So it was ultra strong before.
just points increases does not fix like fundamentally broken units. It is a very few things that you need rules and points to adjust these. And I think also like a lot of people were crippling themselves playing more of an Paragon Warsuits in their list, and if you stop doing that, you get a lot more units in now. So I
Is
think
that the
again,
bodyguards of Morvenn Val?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So like, if people start cutting that, you are gonna actually create stronger sister lists again. So, like the Exorcist didn't go up. The Castigator went up 10 points when it's probably the best battle tank in the game, and
Yeah.
I mean there was not that many increases. Honestly, I understand that the army as a whole went up a lot of points, but I mean, it was a really strong army before, and it's going to keep being a strong army. Hallowed Martyrs, which I started testing before WTC, was I played games into very, very good players with that army, and I scored very highly. It's a very strong army that also suits itself in a meta that we are expecting to be heavily melee focused, like forcing people to fight your units, fighting on that with the full reduce to hit and wound, the +1 to hit and wound, very strong into Orks, very strong into CSM, very strong into Blood Angels.
Yeah, it's not my favorite to say the least. But if you would speculate, Jonathan, you think that many will continue performing great on the bringers, or will this open up the other detachments that we will see more of variety?
I think Penitent Host is just a bad detachment, and I think GW reinforced that by saying you have to pick the catechisms in every round now. I don't think army rules, which works for half your army, is worth it, and I think Bringers of Flame, still Hallowed Martyrs, they're definitely best army rules, and I think that's what's gonna be played.
You agree with that, Axel, or are you spicing up your newborn sisters?
Well, I'm keeping my eyes on Army of Fate as well, I can say. But Hallowed Martyrs is probably where one will end up, if not going with the, well, classic Bringers theme of just having flamers and backed up by some great shooting.
Is there any army that you felt got unproportionally hit hard or so? I do maybe think that Black Templars did get quite a lot of nerves, but they were depending fairly okay. You're shaking your head, Jonathan, so I guess we just discard this one.
I mean, I think Black Templars got hit hard, not because they were incredibly broken, but because GW just doesn't want that playstyle to exist. So I think that's part of it. I don't think it was way too strong.
Very cool. So moving forward, we talked quite a lot about the updated secondaries and secret missions and so on. But if we combined it all, like Axel, who is the biggest winner and who is the biggest loser? Is it something that this got really out of hand, or this is something that Games Workshop just completely misunderstood? I guess it sounds on you that you still believe in the Drukhari. Otherwise, I would believe that you would say that they got too hit hard, if we can say it like that. But if you look at all these components, because I do want to stress that the changes of the secret mission and the secondaries will balance the game, that certain armies who got more punished by it now will do better. But actually, what do you think, all in all, if we would combine it all and look at the factions? Who are the winners and the losers?
Well, I would say that the definite winner, as said before from my perspective, would be Astra Militarum, with their new unit, in addition to not that much of a nerf, actually, especially with the other top dogs going down a bit. Personally, I don't think that the typical Gladius Dark Angels list went up that much in points as well. I do think that they will be quite strong going forwards as well. Or similar, like standard Space Marine builds, such as the Vanguard detachment, for example, with Uriel or Urien, one of their characters, getting an extra vect, just as some trinkling spice to an already good army concept. So those would be my two major winners. As for the losers, I'm a bit partial in this. I do think, however, that Drukhari got a bit too nerfed in this one. Luckily, I have other armies.
and for you, Jonathan? Like, are you just agreeing, or do you see another winner of this one? Some have talked, of course, Orks. Other talks about Necrons. Some actually talk with Grey Knights.
Astra, Militarum, definitely biggest winner. I think also Sisters matchup into Astra Militarum is quite tough, so I don't rate Sisters as highly as I did based on that. For example, I think biggest losers. I think that they Imperial Knights really needed help and they didn't get it. So I think they are one of the bigger losers here, not because they got nerfed, but because they didn't get the buffs. And I don't feel that GW know what they're doing with the faction. Drukhari, big loser, but again, they deserve it because they broke my heart. Astra Militarum biggest winner. I think Imperial Knights is actually the biggest loser.
Very cool. We will continue this show quite for a few more minutes, don't worry. But if you have questions specifically to Jonathan and to Axel, you can write them in the Twitch chat or the YouTube chat, or you can go on discord.gg/Veizla and add your questions there. We will also go through the ones in the best of our abilities in the end of this one, but just want to push for that one. This is a tricky one, of course, but anyone can feel free. Is there any... We've said that these point differences are not as huge as maybe I see them being, just because I'm new to the game. But do you see any type of big change, that there is a list that wasn't good or couldn't really be played, who now have opened up, like a big shift in meta? Because Astra we talked about, we already seen them being strong. We have seen the Orks with the Warhorde recently doing great. We have seen the CSM. But is there some way of playing or some faction that you could see, oh, now when T-Sun and Sisters are a bit nerfed and Drukhari a bit nerfed, maybe this would be great? You can say Blood Angels because they have a cool new codex, but feel free to say whichever one you like.
I think Blood Angels is it's on top of everyone's mind as one of the strongest army coming into this patch. I don't know if they will play out that way from my initial testing and feeling, honestly, but I think there are. I mean, if I were to give a little bit of a hot take based on mostly points, I think that Chaos Knights now have one big knight at 365 points. Not necessarily their best knight, but 365 for a big knight is basically two small knights in points cost, a little bit more. So that is pretty cheap for that chassis. And I think with the nerfs to T-Suns and stuff, there might be some play there. As for people losing, because the track changes aren't that big, it's not like anyone's direct counters became unplayable. So it's hard to say about those shifts, I would say. If Thousand Suns completely disappeared from the meta, then it would be very good for Blood Angels or some other armies. But because Thousand Suns is still there, I don't think that's as big, honestly.
But just to talk about the Chaos Knights, it is the Abominant Knight that you talk about. Isn't that the running joke of the town? Many are laughing at it. I know head coach Sami from Team Sweden, he said, well, it's cheaper, but it still doesn't do anything. And I think also that the stat check guys were kind of laughing at this model. But you're a believer, Jonathan?
I mean, I wouldn't say believer, but at a certain point cost, every model is viable, right? But also, one take for the... I think the coming in what we are looking to be strong now is the melee armies, the CSM, the Blood Angels, the Orks, all bodies that are quite liable to being, say, Strength 5, AP2, Damage 1 Flamed, with from, say, a 3-inch deep strike. So I think Tau Retribution cadre is actually very well positioned to counter the current metagame.
Interesting. I wanted to bring up Tau, and I know that you played it fairly recently, and let's say it's just an army that should be good and has potential, but haven't really made it all the way. And it hasn't been, as far as I know, that Tau has been so much discussed. Of course, the Riptide did get increases. The Pariahs, which are really cool and have been good, also got. But it is an interesting one. Like, maybe we should actually spend a few minutes on the Tau one. Like, what do you see when you look at this, and why do you believe in them?
I mean, it's basically a matchup spread. I think at WTC, Tau Retribution cadres, especially the Flamer suits in there, were played as a counter to Blood Angels lists, and I think that we can really do that job in this meta. So I just expect them to be stronger than they've been before, and mostly based on the meta, and then any point changes. Then, like, the point changes now are so minimal that it doesn't actually. I don't think it affects anything. But
no.
And how is it now?
What that army.
Yes, sorry. Like, Tau has been a fairly new faction, or has that been existing for a long time? Because I know the Codex came in the spring, but I don't know my history in Warhammer 40k. Like, has Tau been around for a long time, or is it a fairly new faction?
Yeah, I mean, I see it as a fairly new faction, but I think it was 3rd or 4th edition when they came out.
Yeah, it was when I started playing Tau.
Okay, 20 years ago.
For a couple of years.
A couple of years. Okay, but
I know, but like, it was a big deal when they came out, because they were the biggest new faction in a while that came out. Like, it was a big deal that they came out, and I mean, it hasn't been many new faction coming out after that. Like, I mean, sure, you can talk about World Eaters or Thousand Suns, but that is just variations on a concept. Like, actual new armies is not that common in 40k, so that's why they still feel new to us.
Yeah, I should stay in my corner, and sorry, Axel, I did cut you off, so please go ahead.
No problem. And one thing to mention about the Red Cadre is the access to having a 3-inch deep strike in this edition of 40k is an extremely strong ability, both for secondary scoring, but also, especially with their Fire and Fade, being able to actually deny your opponent's home field objective using a 3-man suit unit or whatever. It's quite the ability.
Damage on the way as well.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Very, very
getting
cool.
rid of the thing standing there and then taking the point, basically.
I'm already bad at defending my home objective. It will get even worse. That's everything that I'm hearing. Let's go over here. Or was it anything else that you wanted to mention? Otherwise, we can go over to questions. I know it's millions just because it is Warhammer 40k, and I think we could have a show like this every week, almost just updating it as intensely as we have done today. But for sure, very hyped that the balance patch came out yesterday. Is something that we had hoped would come maybe some weeks earlier, but it seems to be that you guys are really happy. I'm getting the impressions the community is pretty happy, and it seems to be that Warhammer 40k is larger, more hyped than ever before, and I think that the critique, as I understood, was the secret mission, and it seems to be on you guys that has been addressed and solved in a pretty nifty way. But one thing, I think it was Goonhammer, one of the big sites and content creators who in their article described, and it's a question here from Ville Pille, are you surprised that the Doom arc from the Necrons got 10 points cheaper? Because even I, who is a new aspiring Necron player and haven't bought my Doom's arc, were waiting on it because I assumed that they would get maybe 20 points more expensive. Now they are 10 points cheaper. Is this the biggest question mark, or did you find anything more, or is it fair with the Doomsday?
I think it's pretty fair. I mean, other things in that Necron list went up, some things went down. I think it's a wash in the end. So it's just creating a more balanced set of units for that army. I think that's fine.
You win some, you lose some. But
and I think Necrons did do that.
Sheet. Yeah.
All right. So you think it's not but did you find anything that you saw was like, this is just strange? Or would you say that then it was kind of, what did you say, Jonathan, in a way that then something else went up or down to compensate?
Yeah, like heavy destroyers. We take the hypercrypt list that'll run maybe Doomsday Arcs and heavy destroyers. The heavy destroyers go up, Doomsday Arcs go down. Single locust destroyers go up. So like maybe your list increased by 5 points in the end if you're running all of those things, and that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing to mention about the Necrons is the points increases to like all the super big models, basically the Monolith and the Tesseract Vault, clearly signaling from a GD perspective, not wanting to have 100 Marine bodies, neither having like double Monolith and Tesseract.
Basically, what GW is saying: buy your one Monolith, and then instead of your second Monolith, you take 2 Doomsday Arcs. Like that's like they're signaling with the points. They put them up, and then they put Doomsday Arcs down, and then the gap becomes enough that you maybe shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say I'm surprised, happy in an aspiring Necron player, but actually I think it's just strange that actually the Nightbringer wasn't even changed, because I think that the Catans are pretty strong, to say the least. But I had one question before we continue that actually came from my end, is that have you already discovered some common themes? Because I think we talked about one theme is that they are changing the amounts between 5 models and 10 models. So that for sure is a new way of thinking from Games Workshop, that they are now expanding quite a bit across all the factions, or many factions. I also saw that they were kind of across the board a small change to Terminators. If you're not from Australia, I think that you haven't had any Terminators on the table for quite a while, but almost all Terminators are like 5 points per 5 models decreased. Did you guys see any? Well, maybe talk about that. Will we see more Terminators, or is that just like not enough?
Well, we did discuss them. I was a guest on Adam Camilleri's Down Under Art of War podcast the other day.
And yes, check it out if you haven't.
For sure. Adam being a great host and all, we were basically bashing all of the Terminator datasheets throughout all of the different Marine or Codex equivalent codexes. Basically summarizing the fact that ordinary Terminators compared to specialized ones, such as the Deathwing Knights or the Death Shrouds of the Death Guard, providing those extra abilities or this extra damage output on an otherwise quite, in this day and age, vanilla datasheet as a typical Stormbolter and Power Fist body provides, might affect it.
So you think that these 5 points will be an impact because it's kind of needed for many arbors, or it will not do any change?
I mean, it's needed, but I don't think that we will be seeing any 30 vanilla Terminator lists dominating boards anytime soon.
No. All right. We also have here from Aura. If WTC was tomorrow, which factions do you see being an auto take? Okay, Astra Militarum, we know that, we heard that. I think that's one of the big takeoffs. Is there any other auto picks that you would say almost all the top contenders would pick today, given what we know now? Just want to emphasize, in 1 week or 2 weeks or even a month, maybe even 2 months, things would have been figured out and the meta will change. But at this very moment, from the limited information we have, are there any other auto picks outside of Astra Militarum?
I think I would be surprised if people didn't play Blood Angels. I think Orks. I mean
Astra Militarum.
Yeah, Astra Militarum.
Orks and Blood Angels. Axel, you agree, or do you see any other things that you would like?
For sure. I mean, some some sort of Space Marine will always find themselves a spot in their top 8, either going for the Blood Angels or maybe heading back to the Vanguard build or staying with the Dark Angel one. Probably people for the upcoming months will be wanting to play the new stuff. So Jonathan's guess on Blood Angels is quite a decent one, I'd say. And then when it comes to other like stable armies, I do see a place for both armies such as Votan, Nids, or maybe Tau, being quite tricky armies on learning how to play. But if you have the good player, they're playing this edition, all of them, really good. And I would personally have those 3 as well in my top 8.
Very cool. Thank you so much for the insight. So a question here from Thomas Wielund, Wielund. How can I solve my shooting with the Dark Angels? I have a lot of 501 profiles that is, boring and doesn't do much. And he's also following up, like, is really the Whirlwind as bad, giving the rules with the indirect fire?
I mean, it depends on the meta. Like, Whirlwind can certainly deal with some things, but not everything. I think it's hard. Like, Space Marine has lots of good shooting units, like Lancers, like all the Gladiator variants are good shooting platforms. Vindicators are very good, especially in Darkness, I would say, because it's used into that 2+ armor save, high toughness thing that they do well. So Eradicators definitely still really good.
The Eradicator blob did go up in points, both for the data sheet itself, but also like the Fire Discipline going up to 40 points now. It's probably still an auto-include if you want to play that sort of unit, providing the much needed anti-tank in an army like Dark Angels.
Yeah, and could be said, like you mentioned there, that the Gladiator Lancer, I believe, have been a very good choice for many Dark Angel lists, and that was unchanged. I don't know actually how big of an impact, or if you can solve some of the shooting with the repulsor, but I guess also that one is a choice, I guess, for a transporter vehicle.
I mean, as I said, Gladiators, as Thomas, as he also brought up here, Hellblasters with Astral and a pocket there with Fire Discipline, also really good. There are quite a lot of good shooting units in Space Marines.
Yeah, and or just a lieutenant.
Yeah, and I think now you can have captains and lieutenants together in one unit, which is a change.
You always could.
Okay, maybe it was a clarification then.
It's let's not go into that. But yeah, okay. It was a clarification.
Thomas Wielund also asked, and I actually don't fully understand the question, like, what types of melee and knights and ICC could be a good choice for Dark Angels? If maybe I misunderstood the question.
No,
it's Inner Circle Companions.
Of course. Stop. What he's saying is he doesn't want to play the melee. So what shooting options is it you should play instead? So we.
Okay, now I understood. He just emphasized on his question.
He doesn't want to punch people. He wants to shoot people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is a way of undress your green and dress your red, and then you sure will not shoot much, and you will fight a lot with the Blood Angels. But I think Dark Angels for sure have a bit more of a shooting profile, but they do shoot a lot. Oh, sorry, he wanted to shoot. He didn't want to melee,
He wants to shoot. Let's move on to the next question.
I'm butchering. Oh, sorry, Thomas. We have Max Nilsson here. What do you think about the Obsidian's Phalanx now, when the characters can use the detachment? I probably butchered the name.
Phalanx. Yeah, no.
Obeisance,
I think the biggest thing for them is Silent King being part of the detachment now, getting the detachment rules. But then again, Silent King's biggest strength is the buffing shooting, and I think he does that better in other detachments. in the end, it's nice if you want to play the units that are affected here, but it is not one of the better Necron detachments either way, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I've been asking, I got a lot of help from the Veizla community, but I haven't fully made up my mind, right? But like from the two of yours perspective, if you would bet on any detachment right now on the Necrons, is it still the Hypercrit, or can it be, what's it called, Awakened Dynasty? There could be a way to go, or where is it? Because they were a bit up and down on the Necron side, so to speak.
One of those are going to be, but both of those are good, I would say.
Yeah. And as I said before, having access to 3-inch deep strike in this day and age, it's really, really good.
Yeah, it's good.
It's very brutal to say the least here. All right, let's see here. Did we have any more questions from the Twitch chat? I think it's more team exorcists for the sisters. I think that that was even before this data slate, Axel, a choice of yours, and I think it's even more a choice right now.
For sure. It's a stable gun platform providing the most deadly shooting indirectly in the game as of right now. Especially combined with the Miracle Dice provided from the Saint Cathy. So, yeah, they're great.
They're great. We got Eric Hohenzollern, I believe, from the YouTube chat asking, does the drop for Ballistus Dreadnoughts change anything for the Space Marines build? Or building?
It makes it more competitive in comparison to say the Lancer. I mean, the Lancer is obviously better, but more expensive. And as I said, if you want a more durable version of Marines that maybe Dark Ages does, or maybe there might be some Black Templar builds that do that quite nicely as well. And then a 2-up save T whatever it is now shooting platform is maybe better when it's cheaper as well. So yeah, definitely, it's an option.
Very cool. I mean, I have some type of wet dream that I want to play a lot of Dreadnoughts, and I don't really figure it out for the Blood Angels, but I don't see it being great in any others. But I'm gonna try it out with the Def Company Dreadnoughts. But for sure, the Ballistas being 30 points cheaper is a great choice. But which edition was it when you played almost only Dreadnoughts, or has that never been a thing?
I mean, Redemptors have been very good in periods. I don't think it's ever been a thing. Because, I mean, you only really had 3 of them, and the small Dreadnoughts were never very good. So like, it was basically 3. A few Redemptors were built for a lot of time, but only spamming them hasn't really happened.
Putting up 8 or 10 Dreadnoughts.
When you played 6 of them.
Oh, you had 6 in 4th?
And actually, I lied. There was a Custodes build in 8/9th edition that ran 9. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of Dreadnoughts. Yeah.
I think
the major problems with like Dreadnoughts in this day and age is that they're quite slow, not being able to walk through walls, while having between like movement to 6 to maybe 8. It doesn't provide the mobility shooting that you need if you are playing on WTC boards or even some GW ones, which might affect not picking them as well.
Awesome. I'm still a hope and a believer, but I need to do the math if actually the Def Company Dreadnoughts was buffed enough. And they have the ability, at least, that if you're being shot at, that they can move forward. But my theory is that they would not be existing at all when they're being shot at. So that's
you can't search me if you're dead. That's
exactly. All right. So last part. I mean, maybe we should summarize it, but I think it's one of the things that we also should summarize is actually the end of this data slate that has been amazing. And this weekend in Malmö, it's one of the biggest tournaments in Sweden. I think it's well over 100 players. Axel, are you going down there to play?
I am not, unfortunately. I'm directing a play here in Stockholm, which you are able to see in 12 days or so when we're premiering. So come and get some culture in combination with your grim dark 40k hobby. Might be good for you.
Different ways of culture, and not everything can always be grimdark. And I believe, Jonathan, you're also missing out. And unfortunately, I would like to take a train just to come down and see this one, because I think it would be very spicy. But I mean, as it's so big, it's still very important and prestigious. But now with the slate out, is that kind of taking the wind out of it, or will it be a vast majority that we just feel, oh, my last run, and it's almost like a token. I've been crafting this to this point, and now I can really. There is no excuses anymore because the meta is over, so to speak. Or how would you look at it?
I think the changes to meta isn't big enough that you couldn't get value out of this. I mean, as I said, people hate playing old rules, but I still think the games are valuable, and there's things to learn from it still. So,
for sure.
Your point, Axel.
Yeah, as Jonathan has mentioned before, you always want to play the new stuff, but still, I mean, it's a great tournament. More than 100 attendees there. It will be Sweden's biggest tournament this year as of yet, I think. And it will be a great time for the people being there. And they will be able to discuss all of the new changes and drawing on new lists on their way home from the tournament. Or discussing it at the bar between games.
Most likely, and maybe some of the ones who can't find the performance. Yeah, if I just had my extra 150 points that I will have from now on, it would have gone different. But if they listen to Jonathan and Axel, they will know that was probably not the decider. But yeah, Malmö Wargaming Weekend is happening this weekend, and it's for sure a mighty one. I don't believe it will be streamed, but most likely at the Veizla Discord, you will be able to get some pictures and also some discussions on what's going on down there. So, okay, Axel, do you have anyone that you think will win? Do you think that it will be Astra Militarum winning another one? Or what is your prediction for the Malmö tournament?
Well, I'd say I'd put my money on Jesper, actually. Playing 1,000 Suns, I think, for this one. Will be a strong contender for the win. Of course, I'm rooting for my fellow sister buddy of the South, Dag Samuelsson, which will provide great results this weekend as well.
I think Dag's list is going up 170 points, so that's a full castigator. And I would say, Jonathan, that is making a difference if you have it or not. Jonathan, do you have any favorites or anyone you're rooting for?
I mean, I don't. I think the most likely to win is Björn or Joel. I think the dark in his list, Joel has submitted this, is very, very good, suited for the meta, suited for the terrain very well. And I think Björn is hot right now, so that goes a long way.
Interesting to hear that Joel Larsson went on the Dark Angels. We did discuss it here, some I think at the lunch on the SSG tournament, and I thought he should play it, but I think that he was not convinced. But maybe it's always the terrain, and that's so many things that we didn't cover in this show. I think one part is that the Games Workshop's terrain, who is improving step by step, also was updated. I haven't looked at it myself. I'm a WTC lover, if I can say it like that, but I believe that the Games Workshop terrain is even further improved, so to speak. And I think that also speaks to how they are kind of actively changing this game, but not with big leaps, with steps by steps, and also being really happy that they changed the secret mission in particular, because I think that was the biggest, especially in the competitive scene, asked part. Many are like me who don't even use the secret missions yet because it's just over our head. But I think that for those who really can extract the most value, that was like the game plan already from deployment to go for secret missions, and now you can't do it if you are second. I think we covered quite a lot. I think we went maybe a bit deeper on some topics, but of course we probably skipped the hundreds.
It's always going to be the way with talking about this. You can go for any amount of time. So just you need to call it enough at some point, basically.
So Jonathan, have your 8 gone up to 9 or down to 7, and or is it still an 8 for you, this data patch?
I mean, I hate setting numbers like that. I mean, I don't know if I made it clear. I have very little faith in numbers, but no, it's the same, but it's subject to change depending on what happens.
And for you, Axel, are you almost up to 10 now, or is 9 still good for you?
Well, I'd go for a 10 if it weren't for those pesky deep strikers that will be a cancer to the meta this upcoming Slate.
And I mean, we should end this show, but I realized that one part that I just assumed we would talk about, we didn't mention Eldari at all, and I just thought that you would do that. Is this just not enough? Are you waiting for the Codex to kind of make Eldari strong again, or what is? We will see the elves on the table next to you soon.
Personally, I'm taking a bit of a break, waiting for the Codex. Probably, I will try some new builds. As always, with my beloved elves, I always tend back to look at them whenever a Slate comes, and especially now, looking at the Serpent datasheet filled with some Corsairs might provide some stable assets to deny your opponent some primary points, which is always good. However, they do lack the ability to move on certain WTC boards, which is quite rough. But as long as you get to play on a bit of a lighter board, then they're great.
Understood. Yeah, we getting some parts here also that Space Wolves did have dreadnoughts, some full list some time ago. I'm looking forward to that part. Jonathan, you said that you probably spent 50 hours on the last 24 hours on this slate. So happy that you could join in having this conversation. Any last words? And when did you say that Team Sweden had the boot camp coming up?
I didn't, but I mean, we have a boot camp in December. We have scrims against opposing teams running until then.
Understood. So it's full throttle Warhammer 40k, and you spend more time now than you did maybe the previous 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
And about you, if we stay with the grimdark part and not the culture work, Axel, like, are you also spending more time than ever, or you need to wait here a bit for your shows to be over and then go full throttle in?
No, for sure. I'm heading all in, and hopefully we will continue this conversation on our Veizla Discord, and also as a viewer, it would be great for you guys to provide some feedback on this type of show. What would you like for Veizla to make in the future, content wise, would be much appreciated from our side.
Excellent and well said, Axel. And I think that we have really seen here since yesterday when the balance patch came and the new points, that the activations in almost all different faction channels has been over the roof. And it's so cool to see how people are just engaging and helping out on all different levels. And I think it shows also, how important Warhammer 40k is right now, and why people are really eager to get their miniatures on the table. I think we will see what goes, but I think the overall part here, if I'm going to try to summarize this, is that don't be worried if your army went up. It probably was a bit strong already, and you will do more than fine. And if you were looking at models who now are cheaper, now is the time to get them painted and get them on the war table.
For sure.
Anything else you want to say, Jonathan?
Words.
No, I'm good.
Any more wise words from you, Axel Rydén?
Drukhari will rise again.
100%. If we know one thing, if it's not a great state right now, it will be soon. That's at least what Games Workshop always is able to do.
Yeah.
They're biding their time in the darkness.
100%. Thank you so much and tuning out here. Hope to see you on the battlefield soon.